It was almost midnight, and the world outside was silent except for the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Arjun sat at his desk, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face. He was working late, distracted by the monotony of his life, when an unexpected sound shattered the quiet. A phone ringing. The old rotary phone on his desk, something he had inherited from his grandmother, had been silent for years. He'd kept it as a nostalgic piece, but now it rang incessantly, filling the room with an eerie urgency. His heart raced as he hesitated to pick it up. Who could possibly be calling? The phone rang again. This time, he didn't hesitate. "Who is this?" he demanded, trying to sound brave. The voice ignored his question and instead began recounting more of his memories. "The house at the edge of the forest, the one you swore you'd never go back to. It's still there, you know, and it's waiting for you." Suddenly, Arjun's mind filled with images from his past, playing with his cousins near the forest, venturing into the old house on a dare, and the unshakable fear that followed. Something had happened in that house, but his memory was hazy. The voice interrupted his thoughts. "You've forgotten the truth, but I can help you remember. Come back, Arjun, tonight." Arjun tried to hang up, but the voice continued, even with the receiver down. It echoed in his room as if the walls themselves carried the sound. He felt drawn, compelled by some unseen force to confront his past. Against his better judgment, he grabbed his jacket and left for the old house. The night was darker than usual, and the road to the house was deserted. As he drove, his headlights cut through the fog, revealing fleeting shadows that seemed to dart out of sight. His mind played tricks on him, whispers in the wind, shapes in the dark. He stopped at the edge of the forest, where the house stood in ruin. The windows were shattered, the roof partially collapsed, and ivy crept along its decaying walls. But despite its dilapidated state, a faint light flickered inside, like a beacon pulling him closer. Each step toward the house felt heavier than the last. The creaking of the old wooden door as he pushed it open echoed like a scream in the silence. Inside, the air was thick, and the smell of damp wood and decay filled his nostrils. He called out, "Who's there?" But only his echo responded. As he moved through the house, familiar sights from his childhood came back to him. A broken rocking chair, a faded painting of a family, and that same eerie mirror in the corner of the attic. Arjun climbed the creaking stairs to the attic, his flashlight barely cutting through the darkness. The air grew colder with each step, and the whispers grew louder, though he couldn't discern their source. When he reached the attic, he saw it, the mirror. It was cracked, covered in dust, and yet it seemed to glow faintly. He approached it, compelled by an unseen force, and wiped away the grime with his sleeve. His reflection stared back at him, but something was wrong. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, and his mouth twisted into a grin that wasn't his own. Suddenly, his reflection moved independently, its hand reaching out toward him. He stumbled back in terror, but the voice returned, louder and more menacing than ever. "Do you see now? This is who you really are." The mirror shattered, and from its shards emerged a figure. His doppelganger, but darker, more sinister. The room filled with an unholy laughter as the figure spoke. "You thought you could forget, but the past always finds you. Now you will stay here, forever." The room spun, and Arjun felt his body being pulled toward the shards of the mirror. He screamed, but no sound escaped his lips. When the world stopped spinning, he found himself standing in the attic, staring at the shattered mirror. He turned to leave, but froze. His reflection was still in the mirror, grinning at him. It whispered, "Thank you for setting me free." As Arjun ran down the stairs and out of the house, the world outside seemed different. Too bright, too pristine. People walked by, but no one acknowledged him. He tried to speak, but his voice was gone. He looked back at the house only to see it in perfect condition, as though it had never been abandoned. And in the window, his doppelganger stood, waving with that same sinister grin. The phone rang again, but this time, it wasn't in Arjun's house. It was in yours.